So, finished Battlefield 6, and after the very short campaign, if you will, I have some pros and some cons and some few things that did stand out about the campaign. Now, starting off with the pros, because we did, release a video where we reacted to the first hour or so of the Battlefield 6 campaign, and then I went ahead and just played it off camera simply because, well, I wasn't even having fun in the first 45 minutes or 50 minutes of us playing the game here. So, but even immediately, one of the first things I noticed or that stood out about the campaign was that the graphics did hold up later on as the game progressed. Oh, the graphics are good here. I guess we go through this way. Man, I know we harped on the graphics early on, but in this little segment here, or excuse me, in this segment here or in this level here, the graphics look pretty good, especially here through this fire and everything and the smoke. But I have no idea where we're supposed to go. Really not this way. Back up with our squad. I went down that way because the graphics look so good. Early on, some segments didn't look as detailed and well thought out with different textures and what have you, and objects within like the environment, or and just in the detail inside of vehicles and on vehicles and even on character models. That did improve as the game went on a little bit down the road, that I will say, especially with like the different environments and different locations you went to, from cities to vast deserts, right? I don't recall any like major jungle scenes. There was some like wooded areas you kind of had to go through, but nothing too heavy on the jungle side. But the graphics was something that definitely stood out as a pro, along with the level design. Some things you could interact with, but it was mostly just ammo, right? There was nothing you can like pick up, or at least anything that I found. And, some like documents and things like that. Maybe I missed it, but there wasn't enough in the game anyway to, necessitate having to explore the environment. Yes, it's a linear experience, but to some extent you want to have some, fun just kind of exploring the world, or just what's going on, or what may have transpired or occurred. And, in that scene, rather it's an office building or a bunker, what have you. So the graphics did look good. That was consistent, especially from what we saw in the gameplay trailers, along with the level design. We also saw that in the gameplay trailers, and that did carry over. It transferred over well into the campaign. That's something we mentioned when we played the beta when it first launched, and just the multiplayer in general. But, EA Dice also nailed the sound design.
Heads up! We shouldn't stay here long. Friendly's on! Reloading! Keep me covered! Fire's coming! Reinforcements incoming. Enemy fire from above.
We're on it!
Shit! Bags is bringing in long-range fire.
Not only could you hear the rounds hitting the ground from different weapons, but depending on if you were inside a vehicle, you could hear them outside the vehicle. You can hear the buildings exploding behind you, just debris falling, dripping all over everywhere. A small detail that I had noticed very early on too is that some of the blood from your enemies and everything makes its way over into the gun. I'm not sure if that would affect its effectiveness in the long run, but it was a nice touch, and one that I thought, well, while very small, but super cool to have. But the sound design, coupled with the levolution, especially during the end-game scenes, the pre-render cutscenes, it looked great, right? But the levolution just in the campaign and while you're experiencing this overall combat experience, You have different explosions going on everywhere. You're dropping sniper towers. You're blowing up buildings, breaking down cover and what have you. And debris is just flying everywhere. And so that's pretty cool. It did, change or alter the battlefield, if you will, in the campaign in some parts. Largely, most of it was scripted, but it was nice to have there regardless, right? I did appreciate and welcome the Levolution. I know it was something EA said they wanted to turn down, at least for the multiplayer. So I'm not sure if that made its way over in the campaign, but I think it was done pretty well, right? That was something I did appreciate, and I thought up the ante and the overall destruction and just what's going on in the battlefield, coupled with like the smoke that some people complain I've seen online, and I'm kind of on the fence about it. I think that it's as realistic as possible. All right, I've never been on the battlefield, but I imagine with all that munitions fire and everything, there's going to be a lot of smoke and everything flying around you, and it could obstruct your visibility or make it hard to see. So that was the challenge anyway that was introduced with that effect, and one that I also thought was pretty cool. Now, couple all of those things together, the graphic design, the Levolution, the sound design, what have you. I thought the weapons too, while I didn't have a favorite or one that I preferred, I just genuinely like long range assault rifles, but I thought the weapon design also looked, decent for a modern first person shooter, especially during the time period that EA DICE was capturing, which did take place during 2028. We will get down to the story here in a second because it's one of my biggest cons with Battlefield 6. But the weapons design, also, I think EA DICE did a really good job. They felt really strong. They felt powerful. Felt good to drop enemies. But I think that's the perfect time to segue into one of the cons I have with Battlefield 6 is the repetitive and dull enemy types coupled with the dull and uninspiring AI. Both was absolutely atrocious. When it came down to the enemy types, you typically had a heavy gunner, or machine gunner, marksman, and an RPG, a soldier with an RPG. And on the battlefield, they're constantly calling out, especially whatever player character you're currently taking over or in control. They're constantly yelling out, marksman down, RPG down. Machine gunner down. They're reminding you that there's only those three basic type of enemies. I mean, you could throw in the fourth with just your basic drone, your basic soldier, right, with just the assault rifle or whatever. But it was just those three types that really presented an issue, and it was only really when you were in a level that had a lot of different ways they could hit you from. So those two things were just one of the aspects of Battlefield 6 that ruined the campaign, right? It did feel like a multiplayer, just one massive multiplayer training ground with bots. That's what it felt like. Like, assault this position, defend this position. This is something we talked about in the first 45 minutes of the game. And I was super cautious approaching from there because I was like, if this is more of what we're going to get, then it's not looking good, and it's not looking good early on. The AI was dull, and had no lack of awareness. They would run in and out of cover. They would just follow in a single line, just come straight at you. They would fire out in the open. Yes, they would throw an occasional grenade once in a while, but there were times where I wish the AI pursued you once they saw you. They actually followed you. Like if you ran past them fire and you ran upstairs, and their behavior should dictate that they should go and pursue you, right? Because that's typically what a human player would do. Spot the enemy, pursue the enemy, especially if they're, running away from you. But the AI really presented no kind of challenge. And I played on Veteran, the second highest level difficulty available in the game, which I thought was fitting, being that I haven't played a Battlefield 6 campaign in a very long time. I haven't played a first-person shooter campaign in a very long time. So I thought Veteran would have presented some form of challenge with the AI, minus just upping, the damage ratio, because that's essentially all it did. Got dropped a few times, took a few shots to drop other enemies, but essentially that's all it did, That's all it did. So playing on Veteran did not really, improve the overall difficulty within the campaign, and I felt no need to really lower it. At times, I'm like, man, should we increase it? Because there were scenes where the enemies were so far and few in between, I didn't really feel like I was challenged by the game until it came to like playing on some of the open area maps, and you're just flooded with enemies everywhere, and you're just getting shot, and you just can't tell which direction that the bullets are coming from. So yeah, the AI was boring and inspiring, and the enemies presented no challenge whatsoever playing that veteran. Now, the other part of the Battlefield 6 campaign that really frustrated me was the story and its presentation, starting with the horrendous voice acting that sounded like we were playing a game that should have came out in the mid 90s or early 2000s, not here taking place in 2028, at least in the end game lore. But the voiceover and the acting was just stale, and the face expressions also just felt like they came ripped out of like maybe 2-generation graphics ago. Not very detailed. The acting, I mean, the voiceover actors didn't have much material to work with, because it's not like the script was compelling or did anything original to keep you invested in the overall story or invested in these characters. Some characters did get killed along the campaign, some that you played as, some that were important or integral to the characters in your squad, but you felt absolutely nothing because you couldn't invest in these characters, their struggles, right? Their connection to the overall plot, their backstory. And all of those things essentially made the gameplay boring from start to finish. If it wasn't for us wanting to review the campaign, and something we said since we started covering Battlefield 6, since the day one trailer, if it wasn't for those things, I would have never returned to the Battlefield 6 campaign. In fact, I went back to playing another game that's up next for review. So if you haven't yet, hit the like button for me on this video and subscribe if you're new to the community so you can catch that video. But if it wasn't for those things, I wouldn't have come back to the Battlefield 6 campaign. A few standouts. I mean, the vehicle combat was okay. There was one instance where you're like in this amphibious tank boat thing, and you're just shooting mines going across the water. Then also there were no air combat scenes, no jet scenes. Hugely missing from the campaign. Missed opportunity there big time. Even if it's just to introduce air combat in Battlefield 6 for future multiplayer expansions. But no air combat scenes. I thought it could have came at any time, but nope, we didn't get it. You also drove a tank. I didn't really care for the tank mission too much later down a few levels in the game. I just wanted to get it over with at that point, avoid it as much as possible. It felt clunky. It felt ineffective. I guess playing on veteran just felt like it took way too many shots to drop the tanks. They would drop me in like 3, or I would have so much damage I would barely escape to the next checkpoint. Not gonna lie, I did get eliminated quite a few times, but it was largely questionable for most of them. But I did get eliminated enough times. But most of them occurred when I was in tank combat, and that still didn't necessitate me lowering the difficulty. I didn't feel like it was challenging enough. I just felt like, if anything, it's a little gimmicky. And that's how the vehicle combat scenes felt in the Battlefield 6 campaign. So I didn't care for them a whole lot. A few levels that stood out, I mean, I did like the escort the president level from start to finish. I thought that was pretty cool. And that's when the story probably had one of its best highlighted moments, because you got the president, you got POTUS there, and just the stakes are high, everything that's going on, So I did enjoy that level. It did end with what I thought was going to be an epic, like, escort the president's vehicle car scene out of the city, but it was very short. And again, I was like, wow, that's it? A lot of the scenes that ended, I'm just like, wow, that's it? Especially when it dealt with, combat. I'm just like, wow, that's it? Another level that I enjoyed playing through was the nighttime raid in Cairo. I'm mad it took this long into the campaign for things to actually get fun. And wow. I mean, so far I like the nighttime scene. Took a little while to pick up, but
You're on your own after this one.
Thanks.
does make it seem like you're in the middle of a chaotic and frantic environment with a lot going on. But so far, one of the best levels I played in the campaign. Still not saying much because it started off very, very slow. From start to finish, you had to use your night vision goggles quite a bit. So it did change the visuals, which was welcoming because for once it kind of felt like you were watching this play out versus actually playing it out. And I just thought from once again, with the stakes being what they were and the narrative and everything that's going on, but you trying to find, this informant and gather intel, and you're at one point you have to make it through without being spotted, or there's some level of stealth incorporated. So I thought it was a fairly decent level and one that I enjoyed, just one that comes to mind. All the other ones were very just run, shoot, do this thing, interact, blow it up, run away. But story was told through flashbacks in a typical, it looks like they borrowed from, dare I say it, Black Ops format or way they like to tell and present their story. So it was told through flashbacks. You raid this house of this military official Mills, and they're telling the story, and it's like the soldiers know what happened, she knows what happened, but you, the player viewer, have to play through the campaign to understand what's happening. And it's things like they mention, like, oh well, what happened at Gibraltar? So you played through the Rock, you played through Gibraltar, but then I don't know what really happened. And the story, it felt like it never really progressed. You had an idea of who and what the Pax Armada was, and essentially they're just a one nation anti-America army. All the nations that wanted to rise up against America joined this one huge military called Pax Armada, and this, for some reason, caused NATO to break down and left America fighting this war that, spoiler alert, it's not that big of a deal, but spoiler alert, to fight essentially this army that's funded and created by the CIA, that Alex Kincaid, the main bad guy, again, just goes rogue. That's kind of how it ends. And Alex Kincaid, he's given the story kind of, and you see it coming a mile away. But he's giving a speech about how, Mills she's not telling the full story and taken down before he can finish. And then Mills tries to blow you up. And that's the ending of the game. It's just a press through, maybe take out 10, not even soldiers. And then it's a cutscene to get to Alex Kincaid. There is no firefight, no combat strategy, nothing to take him down. You just hit X or whatever you're playing on, breach the door, and pow. Alex Kincaid is just running by, he's down. That's it. You escape on foot, which I don't even see how you can, lose in this little playthrough here. But you reach the rooftop, and that's it. Cutscene goes back to Mills' house. And then the ending happens. Spoiler alert again. Murphy, the main character that you end up finished playing, you played through quite a bit of characters. You played Espinoza, you play through Carter. But Murphy, the main character you end up playing through, is left with the decision by a squad. You either take out Mills or bring her in. She says, if you bring me in, they're going to take me out anyway. Some grand conspiracy with Pax Armada. And then it ends to a black screen. You hear a gunshot, and then it ends. Then it roll credits. That's the ending, which left much to be had. Pax Armada isn't even really technically defeated at the end, and Alex Kincaid was like a high operating official in Pax Armada, but he is not Pax Armada. In fact, one of his squad mates, Espinoza, ends up like, well, this is only the beginning kind of thing. So the ending left much to be had. Did he, take out Mills? Is he trying to cover up her death? Who knows? The campaign felt like a testing ground for the multiplayer and future battle royale. It didn't feel like there was enough attention to detail invested in the areas that really could have made this story a bit more compelling to tell and a bit more polished in its presentation. But it truly feels like after playing the campaign straight through, it was only made to avoid the backlash that EA Dice got with Battlefield 2042. Being that Battlefield 2042 didn't release with a campaign at all, which is just as egregious as what they did here with Battlefield 6. But Battlefield 2042 didn't have a campaign at all and still released at typical retail at that time for a video game. But I started off excited, ready to dive into, and albeit short, yes, because typically we don't expect the campaigns to be no longer than 6.5, at best, maybe 7 hours, but still very much thrilling military shooter experience. But I was left utterly disappointed after finishing the campaign. Just playing through the campaign, starting off on the campaign. I finished the campaign to get to this point here. And while the ending implies that yes, there will be, and if there is going to be a Battlefield 7, then it has to be told or it has to be done much better than what we got here. That's all I got for this one, y'all. If you haven't yet, do me a favor and like this video for me. And if you're new to the community, consider subscribing with the notification bell turned on to receive notifications on all future content, videos, live streams, posts, all that good stuff. But I do hope to catch you on the next one. So until then, be easy.